In the Hebraic worldview, truth is established by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. For an event to be historically certain, it requires contemporaneous, verifiable records of public events. The public execution and resurrection of Jesus occurred in full view of the Roman and Jewish world. Eyewitness accounts were documented and circulated, while those who saw the events were still alive to corroborate them. This fragment shows the physical anchor of biblical history. The gap between these events and their written record is roughly 0 to 60 years. This tight chronological window serves as the baseline for historical reliability. A different pattern emerges when investigating the origins of Islam. Following its inception, the documented record ends. For 150 to 200 years, there is no contemporary record that matches the Islamic narrative. This chronological void is a gap of silence where there should be evidence. From a forensic perspective, a movement that leaves no contemporary footprint for 2 centuries raises significant questions. It suggests a foundation built on later tradition rather than immediate history. We evaluate the historical record of Islam across 3 metrics: chronology, archaeology, and manuscript integrity. If a religion's origins are obscured by a 2-century fog of oral tradition, it fails the biblical standard of a public, historically anchored revelation. Our first metric is chronology. The starting point is 632 CE, the traditional date for Muhammad's death. The first biography of his life, the Sirah by Ibn Ishaq, does not appear until 767 CE. This delay covers 4 to 5 generations. At this distance, a document functions more as theological storytelling than a record of verified facts. Later writers began applying biblical patterns to the narrative, such as miracles echoing those of Moses, despite a total lack of 7th century contemporary support. By the mid-9th century, the record suddenly expands with the canonical Hadith, introducing over 600,000 sayings and legal rulings. Bridging a 200-year gap with 600,000 distinct rulings challenges oral transmission, suggesting a break from organic preservation. The evidence points to the Abbasid remix, a period where these sayings were compiled to provide divine authority for the legal codes of the Arab Empire. The rapidly expanding empire needed a distinct religious identity and a centralized hero prophet to unify its vast conquered territories. This chronological distance indicates that the foundational narrative of Islam was an imperial construction, drafted long after the events it claims to describe. Our second metric is archaeology. The biblical record is anchored in the physical earth. Excavations consistently confirm the locations of the temple, the apostles, and the kings of Israel. Islamic tradition identifies Mecca as the ancient center of the world, a massive hub for trade and the site of Abraham's original house of God. However, regional trade maps from the 2nd through 6th centuries show no record of the city. The established spice routes bypass this valley entirely. Furthermore, Mecca sits in a barren valley, lacking the water and agriculture required to sustain the population described in early biographies. If Mecca hosted a major monotheistic shrine before the late 7th century, an archaeological footprint would exist. Instead, there is only silence. Physical evidence in the earliest mosques shows their original direction of prayer, the Qibla, did not point toward Mecca, but north toward Jerusalem or Petra. These alignments suggest the movement's original center was far north, closer to the Levant. The city of Petra provides a plausible alternative for the movement's true geographical origins. Under later caliphs, the Holy City was moved to the deep desert, providing political isolation and a nationalistic center distinct from the biblical Levant. The absence of early Meccan archaeology and the shifting Qiblas indicate that the geography of Islam was rewritten to support a new Arab-centric identity. Our final metric is manuscript integrity. The argument from preservation claims the Quran has remained unchanged and perfectly preserved since its revelation. In 1972, the discovery of the Sana'a manuscript challenged this narrative of perfect preservation. This is a palimpsest. Scribes erased an original lower text and wrote a newer version over the same parchment. Modern imaging of this lower text reveals variations in the wording and structure that differ from the modern Uthmanic version used today. Researcher Daniel Brubaker has documented hundreds of similar physical alterations in early manuscripts, including erasers, taped-over words, and later insertions. These changes reflect a linguistic barrier. 7th century Arabic was an ambiguous script without dots or vowels. A single string of characters could be read in multiple different ways. It was not until the 9th and 10th centuries that scholars used red and gold markings to finalize a specific reading, effectively deciding what the text meant. Caliph Uthman attempted to end this textual uncertainty by ordering the burning of all variant copies to enforce a single, uniform version. This destruction of evidence was a human attempt to enforce uniformity, because preservation had already failed. It shows the Quran was a redacted text, edited by men to stabilize a growing religion. The results of our investigation are clear. The early record of Islam is defined by a 2-century gap, a missing holy land, and physical evidence of textual redaction. This process reveals the spirit of replacement, the gradual expropriation of biblical heritage to legitimize a new empire. This theology was built directly on top of biblical foundations. The Dome of the Rock occupies the exact footprint of the Jewish temple. The inscriptions on this building serve as a direct polemic against the deity and sonship of Jesus. The Abbasid Empire finalized this system, turning local folklore and ambiguous scripts into a rigid imperial religion. We recognize a foundation by its fruits. A faith that requires the burning of evidence and the rewriting of geography cannot offer the same certainty as the verifiable history of the Bible. The uncertainty of Islam's origins highlights the reliability of the God of Israel. While human inventions shift over time, the Word of God remains settled in heaven and verified on the earth.